Hey everybody, if you can hear me, I am just getting us set up today. We are all about retirement taxes. I know there's a very intriguing headline for today's live, which is how every retiree can pay less in taxes. So we're going to get into things pretty quickly. Just get right off the bat with some retirement tax frameworks and thoughts to consider. Really, at the core here is everybody has paid tax all their life. Nobody wants to pay more tax than they have to as they get into retirement. And the core challenge here is we are used to being out of control when it comes to our taxes, in the sense that we make a certain salary, a certain amount gets handed off in the form of taxes, and we are not in control of that. And all of a sudden we inherit both this incredible potential to manage our taxable income in retirement, but also this incredible responsibility, which is managing our taxable income in retirement. It can be a double-edged sword in the sense that we will both get the opportunity to manage our actual tax owed, or the expense, the tax expense that we will face in retirement, but also we can cause ourselves major tax problems if we do this improperly. So this initial 10 minutes of today's live are going to be all about how do you manage this responsibility well, wisely, and actually do this in a way that helps you lower your actual taxes. And at the same time, understand the pitfalls and the potential problems that could occur as a result of doing this inappropriately. So as always, I'm going to really start teaching this through frameworks. I love frameworks. I think a framework is the best way to think through how to actually make good decisions in this regard. So right off the bat, and I'll show some examples. Also today we'll do the live interaction in slightly different format, which is I will be taking questions from live attendees first, and then doing responses to comments on the channel second. So if you're in here, let the brain juices stir, start thinking about your tax-related questions as they relate to retirement, and start putting them in the chat, and I will make sure to answer those in about 10 or 12 minutes. All right, so let's just get right into what are we thinking about here when it comes to retirement taxes? All right, I've written some stuff on the board to prep. Right off the bat, by the way, actually, let me just double check. Yeah, so we have audio working. Cool. I'm trying a new microphone, so if I turn away from the mic, hopefully it still works. Okay, so let's just get right into this so that nobody is delaying the value here. I'm not delaying the value. Retirement taxes are really a trade-off. There's everything in retirement planning is a trade-off. You'll hear me say that a million times. There is no guarantees in life. Retirement taxes, as for everything, are a trade-off. They are a trade-off between today versus some uncertain future. I'm going to explain this with some concrete examples of common tax scenarios that both I and many other financial planners have shown on their channels, but are definitely things that you guys, viewers, prospects, people who I speak to on a daily basis are considering. The core question at the root of retirement tax planning is there is some fundamental juxtaposition between today and some uncertain future. And we have to ask ourselves, what do we have to earn in order to justify reducing our consumption today? So let me give you the most concrete examples I can of the most common tax optimizations or strategies that get considered. So one common tax strategy would be to withdraw all of your taxable accounts first for living expenses, because that is just common. That is a common withdrawal sequence. But let's just say you did that. One of the reasons and one of the benefits of doing that is you will pay a very low tax, because taxable accounts are often taxed at long-term capital gains rates. You also don't get taxed again on your original basis. So what you withdraw that was original invested money, you only get taxed on the growth. Now, what that does is it creates a really tax-friendly first year of retirement, let's say, or any year, because you can typically withdraw up to a very nice margin of total gains from that type of an account and pay 0% tax. For a married couple, that's up to almost $96,000 and change in long-term capital gains income. And if you withdraw from that type of account, you could potentially pay literally zero tax on hundreds of thousands of withdrawals, as long as the gain is less than that $96,000 and change. All right, that looks great on the surface. The question's what is that really about? And it really is a trade of today versus some uncertain future. Because on the one hand, you withdraw that money, you might owe very little tax this year. This year looks really tax-friendly. On the other hand, how long can you do that before you start to have to withdraw from pre-tax buckets? and therefore have no other source or tool to help balance out the fully taxable other income sources that you might have in the future in retirement. Also, depending on your legacy goals, drawing down a taxable bucket means that your heirs don't have a this investment bucket that can then get the step up in basis at the end of life. Now, the purpose of explaining this is not to say one is better than the other. It's just to illustrate, like, there is some trade-off of a benefit today for some uncertain future benefit, or maybe in this case, you could even call it a certain future benefit if you're thinking about a step up in basis. The point is just like we have to have some evaluation of this because it can look really good to show a way to pull a bunch of spending money in a very tax-friendly way. But the question is, what is the cost of that? There's a second element to this. Let's give another example. A second example is Roth conversions. I think I've done a really good job of having a very balanced view and perspective on Roth conversions and really tried to explore all sides of this. One of the fundamental, I could be convinced out of this position if someone came to me with a really compelling argument that is from first principles with a mathematical evaluation that convinces me out of this. But from where I stand right now, Roth conversions are essentially the epitome of this type of a trade-off. You pay some cost today for some uncertain future benefit, and we have to ask ourselves what would we have to earn in order to justify that reduction in consumption that occurs today as a result of expediting or bringing forward a future expense to today. Now, again, not a problem, and you'll see because we're going to go through two more steps of thinking about the framework around retirement tax. But it is a perfect illustration of that fundamental value trade-off. A Roth conversion is giving something up today to get a potential uncertain benefit tomorrow. You could do the Roth conversion today and die tomorrow. And then what is the Roth conversion worth to you? It might be worth something to your heirs, but you'll see when I go through the next set of steps. So before I get too far down the rabbit hole and get pigeonholed into just a Roth discussion, the point is all of these different retirement tax opportunities are actually just a fundamental trade between something you get today or give up today for some uncertain future benefit. All right. So let's go to the second side of this whiteboard and I'll continue this exploration with you guys. Sorry for the dead time here. I screwed this in too tightly. All right. Now, this second side of the whiteboard is actually more tactical. The first side is a framework. The second side is actually how we apply it. So the second part, after we understand that it is a framework, really it is a trade-off of something for today for something tomorrow, and no matter how we look at tax and retirement. The second element here is we need to map out those trade-offs. So this how we make this practical. The way you make this practical is we have to list out the benefits we obtain now or the benefits we obtain later. And then on the other side of that Venn diagram, put the cost or the price we pay for that. So an easy example of this would be if the earlier example of a taxable account is, you might withdraw down a taxable account today. So we benefit today of drawing down a taxable account is tax friendly year one of retirement. All right. That would be our benefit for drawing down a taxable account today. The cost we accrue later is no step up in basis for our heirs. Another way to frame that is if we draw down a taxable account today, our heirs have a higher probability of inheriting a pre-tax account rather than a taxable account, which means they might inherit less tax-friendly resources. If we strip that down to its most basic way to think about it, it really is just a fundamental question about who's going to pay the tax. Is it you today? Is it yourself tomorrow? Or is it your heirs once you pass? Taxes always get paid. The kind of online illustrations of showing tax getting paid can show friendly years. They often don't show the other side of that, which is less friendly years. And eventually someone is going to pay those taxes. Now, you can actually manipulate this with some reasonable probability to set up future years to be more friendly with the predictable nature, or for your heirs to have a more friendly tax situation with a predictable nature. But the fundamental point I'm trying to illustrate here is we need to understand what is the benefit now and the price we're going to pay later, or the opposite. What's the benefit we're going to get later and the price we're going to pay now? So if we just invert this original example of cost of a taxable account, if we forego drawing down a taxable account today in favor of leaving it for our heirs as to have a step up in basis, let's say, then the benefit we're going to get later is our heirs get a step up in basis. The price we pay today are less tax efficient years early in retirement because we're going to potentially, let's say, presumably draw more from a pre-tax account, right? So that hopefully just illustrates the actual framework in practice for a very simple case. And I'm going to intentionally not go too deep into any individual circumstance because what I'm going to try to do is answer your guys' questions. So hopefully this will stir the thoughts and you'll throw questions at me that will allow us to demonstrate this framework in real time. So to kind of finish off the tax framework here, the final question here, we're identifying this concept that we have something, a trade-off that is for some uncertain future benefit. Then we have to map out our benefits. Are there benefits now and price that we pay later, or benefits later and a price we pay today? And then we have to ask, are our actions consistent with our goals? And that might actually be the most important question when it comes to retirement tax. Retirement tax planning is kind of like a loaded gun. It can be a really useful tool. If you have good training and you know how to use it, it can be a useful tool. If you're untrained, you're very likely to shoot yourself in the foot. And so from that framework, we always want to go back and say, are our actions consistent with our goals? And so let me give an example of that as well. So let's just say your goal is to maximize certainty in retirement. You want the most amount of certainty that your retirement will not run out of resources as you go through retirement. Then the question is, does a Roth conversion support that case? It's not obvious on the surface. And this is not me making a negative or positive case for Roth conversions. I'm just going to illustrate the way you would think about if we said, the goal is to maximize the certainty that we don't run out of money in retirement. Then does a Roth conversion support that case? Okay, let's think about this. What is a Roth conversion? A Roth conversion is taking a future tax expense that we don't know what marginal bracket will be at, what the dollar amount will be, or what level of wealth we'll have at that future time. We don't know. We have retirement planning software. It can give us an idea, but we don't actually know. So the Roth conversion is taking an unknown future expense, bringing it forward to today so we have certainty about what that tax expense will be, choosing to pay that tax expense today to get some uncertain future benefit later at some point down the line when we are going to be, who knows how long, like you can run a model for this. Now, okay, if we tie this back to the original question, is that consistent with our goal of not running out of money or having the odds be as high as possible of not running out of money in retirement? Well, I would make the case that it is unlikely to meet that goal or help with that goal if you are constrained on your spending. Meaning if you are not extremely wealthy and don't have a high flexibility level in terms of your withdrawal capability, Roth conversions can hurt more than help in some cases, because what they do is they bring forward a future expense. All you really know about the Roth conversion at the point at which you do it is that you are volunteering to pay a future expense today. That's all you really know. So the question is that in alignment with having the most certainty that you won't run out of money in retirement? Well, I would say no, because what you're doing is, let's say you were planning to spend $50,000 this year, and you're going to do a big Roth conversion of, let's say, I don't know, that would incur a $25,000 tax expense. Well, now you've gone, instead of spending $50K this year, you spent $75K. So you've actually increased your withdrawal rate on your portfolio. The only thing we know that day is that you've drawn more from your portfolio in order to facilitate paying for this uncertain future event or this uncertain future probability. To me, the logical conclusion there is that does not bring any more certainty around the fact, any more ability to deduce certainty around one's ability to manage and get through retirement with a high level of certainty that they won't run out of money. Okay, that doesn't mean the Roth conversion is not a good tool. It just means it's not consistent with that goal. And if our goal was to maximize retirement certainty, then we might be being steered into Roth conversions as a solution and finding out later that we're disappointed that that did nothing to improve the anxiety we feel about the volatility of our spending or our resources going up and down or anything like that. So that was one example. Again, not a case for or a case against Roth conversions. I'm sure we'll have questions in the chat that will go through this, but it is illustrative of this question of which is, does the desired method that I'm pursuing actually maximize the outcome or the likelihood I'll reach my goal? All right, so now with all that said, to give a 1-minute conclusion here, retirement tax planning can definitely save you money. Here's what that would look. If you choose to pay taxes today and you live a long time, you might save money in taxes because you paid it today and you live a very long time. In some sense, you could think of that as an insurance probability, an insurance policy, right? What is an insurance policy? An insurance policy is taking an expense, paying it for the low probability that you'll get some very low probability but large benefit that will give you some more certainty. But if the fringe outcomes occur, that's what insurance is. And I would argue that Roth conversions are similar. The probability that most people live past 87 or 90 is pretty low. It's probably like for men 1 in 10. We could get the actual actuarial tables. It's probably like 1 in 10 for men and 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. Yes, this is a melon hat. Thank you. It's 1 in 10 for men and 1 in 7 or 8 for women, depending on your other health considerations. Now, the question is, should every person be buying an insurance policy on that 1 in 10 probability or 1 in 8 probability? Maybe. I'm not saying they shouldn't, actually. 1 in 10 is actually a pretty reasonable probability. It's just that the question has to be relayed to the person. Like, is that consistent with your actual goal or your actual desire? The other side of this would be choosing to have a tax-friendly or earlier retirement withdrawal strategy means that you're going to shove the tax risk to the back of your retirement. So if you live longer, you will have more tax as an expense risk. And then the question, that the gamble you're making there is that you won't live that long, and therefore that later tax as an expense risk will actually disappear because you will pass away before that happens, or before it becomes material enough to have outweighed the benefit you accrued in the beginning of retirement. I hope that wasn't too theoretical, but the point is just to illustrate, all we're doing with tax planning in retirement is a game of probabilities of saying, where do I want to pay for insurance now on the off chance that I live a long time and therefore tax will harm me later in retirement? Or do I want to take the gamble, the other side of the gamble, which is that I'll have a tax-friendlier earlier portion of retirement and have the gamble that I won't live long enough to accrue enough damage at the back end of my retirement to have made that a bad choice. So I will pause there and just say, I hope that made sense. That is a kind of an esoteric way to think about tax in that sense. But the point is, any retiree can try to build a strategy to pay less tax in retirement. And the question is, which of those two methodologies has a higher probability of working out? We can think of this from a probabilistic sense. My belief is that having a tax-friendly or earlier retirement has a higher probability of working out for more retirees, given the actuarial tables, because most people will not live past age 90. And so if we're saying, how do we provide tax information that will benefit the majority of people? The answer is having a tax-friendlier front end of retirement, because 9 out of 10 men and, what will be 7 out of 10 women will, I don't know if I got those numbers right, but a much higher probability of men and a much higher probability of women, or proportion of women, will not reach age 87, 90, 95, where these tax as an insurance policy elements pay off. So again, now, ultimately, the decision of what tax optimization you do is one that should come from education, comprehension of this framework, and then making a decision, and then sticking to your decision. Like, where do you want to take the investment risk, let's say, where this will pay off? Do you want a more certain payoff now for a potential uncertainty later that there might be some harm, or a more certain payoff later with the more likely expense or damage happening now, but the probability, it relies on the probability that you live a long time? All right. I hope that made sense. I'm going to leave the kind of quote unquote tax discussion there. For those of you that are still here with me and have suffered through that kind of philosophical framework, let's talk through some actual cases here based on your guys' comments. So please feel free to continue to throw stuff in the comments. I'm going to try to give a little more time to your guys' live comments today. Maybe take it all the way through till 12:15 or 12:30 PST if there's enough action in the live comments here. So real quick, let me show you the exact 3-pillar comprehensive retirement roadmap that takes retirees from uncertainty to peace of mind that less than 1% of retirees actually have in place. Now, I've built hundreds of these for retirees, and I can say with a high degree of confidence that these are the 3 pillars every retiree needs to have in place in order to have full confidence that they're not missing anything in their retirement plan. And I broke each of these down by the specific questions. You can see them here that each needs to be answered and the best way to answer them. Now, we've done this across pre-retirees, recent retirees, married couples, single retirees, $1 million portfolios, $10 million portfolios, all the above, and it works. And it's my gift to you today. It's absolutely free. It's in the first link in the description below this video. It's going to say free comprehensive retirement roadmap training. Just click the link, enter your info, and you'll get instant access all for free.